Batman arguably has the greatest rogues gallery in all of comics, a lineup of iconic, unforgettable villains, many of whom act as twisted mirrors of the Dark Knight himself. But none take that concept quite as literally as the subject of today's video, Killer Moth. He's a perennial loser, a punchline in purple and green, the kind of guy who looked at Batman and said, "What if I did that, but worse?" From his first appearance, Killer Moth wasn't just a criminal, he was a man obsessed with being a big shot. He didn't just want to be rich or feared, he wanted to be the ultimate criminal. But no matter how hard he tried, he just couldn't pull it off. He wasn't even close. He's a character that was so bad that he didn't appear in the legendary DC animated universe. But later shows embraced him for his failings and made him pretty memorable. Case in point, the Batman's Killer Moth. But before I get to him, I think it's important to look back at his comic book origins and examine how he was used in other media. Killer Moth debuted in Batman number 63, published in 1951, and he was a mysterious convict who was inspired by Batman to become a defender of criminals. All they had to do was agree to pay him a share of their loot, and if they ran into any trouble they could signal him by lighting the Moth signal, and he'd drive to get them in his Mothmobile and help them get out of any jams. Yeah, he really was a big old copycat, and that's a key part of his identity, particularly in these early stories. We weren't initially told his real name, but with the money he'd stolen and hidden away, he created a false identity for himself. Wealthy socialite Cameron Van Cleer. I feel like there's a pun hidden away in that name somewhere, but it's evading me. Let me know what you think in the comments. While Killer Moth was more than capable of dealing with the police, he was less effective against Batman, and in their first scuffle, he fell from a bridge into the sea and was assumed dead. However, he turned up shortly afterwards, now a sopping wet laughingstock with his reputation in tatters. What use was he if he couldn't deal with Batman? When next they fought, Batman deduced his secret identity and exposed him, meaning that Killer Moth had to assume a new identity. After escaping from prison, he decided that he quite liked the idea of impersonating Bruce Wayne, so he had his face surgically altered, kidnapped Wayne, and then went about living his life, including as Batman. But this wasn't a turn towards the side of good. No, instead Killer Moth pretended to be Batman, but used the identity to rebuild his own reputation as Killer Moth, running away scared at the mention of him, and then doubling back as Moth to bask in the limelight. However, he was brutally gunned down by mobsters, ruining his face. Batman rushed to save his life, telling Robin that even though Moth was a criminal, he didn't deserve to die this way. The doctors informed Batman that they had to remove a bullet from his brain, and this had destroyed his short-term memory, meaning he no longer remembered who Batman was. After this, Killer Moth didn't have any significant stories for decades, and he was often used as the butt of jokes. He's notable for inadvertently persuading Barbara Gordon to become Batgirl after she stumbled upon Killer Moth and his henchmen trying to kidnap Bruce Wayne while on her way to a costume party. Despite his tenure as a costumed supervillain, he was no match for Batgirl. And this was a recurring theme in his stories. He was presented as a loser and a failure. He even formed a short-lived team with other Z-listers like Catman and Calendar Man, called the Misfits. This group kidnapped Bruce Wayne and Commissioner Gordon and held them for ransom. While the other group members thought this was a simple kidnapping case, Killer Moth had an uneasy feeling about Bruce Wayne, perhaps the remnants of his memory bubbling away in that bullet-shaped hole in his brain, and he decided to try to murder them anyway, cementing him as a ruthless, dishonest bandit. Fortunately, his colleagues didn't have the same taste for blood, and the group disbanded after they were caught by Batman. A huge part of Killer Moth is his fluid identity. He had several aliases like Danko Twang, my favourite, Mothman, and Laszlo Furlenbach. But we eventually learned his real name was Drury Walker. Got to admit, after Danko Twang, Drury Walker is a bit of a letdown. He was a deeply insecure man, someone who tried to avoid reality by pretending to be other people. He wanted to be like Batman, but evil, and when that backfired, he was angry with the world. During the Underworld Unleashed crossover in 1995, where the demon Neron gave dozens of supervillains enhanced powers in exchange for their immortal souls, Walker was one of the beneficiaries. Preying on Walker's despair at being a laughingstock, Neron offered to make the world fear him by transforming him into the mutant Charaxes, a reference to butterflies with pointed wings. As Charaxes, he had a taste for human flesh and terrorized Gotham. Arguably, he was more of a Robin villain in this form because that's where he made most of his appearances. He almost succeeded in eating Robin were it not for a timely intervention from the debuting Lockup, who took Charaxes to his secret prison. Due to his monstrous nature, there were only so many stories you could tell with him, but hey, at least he wasn't a joke anymore, right? Well, you'd think that, but Charaxes underwent a further embarrassing mutation, where he started laying eggs that hatched miniature clones of Drury Walker. And they all hated each other. However, Charaxes couldn't resist his maternal instinct and nurtured them. The clones even referred to him as Mom to add to the indignity. Charaxes' final appearance came during Infinite Crisis, where he was casually ripped in half by Superboy Prime, an alternate reality version of Superman whose universe was destroyed in the original Crisis, and sometimes I really hate comics. Although he did briefly return as a zombie during the Blackest Night crossover to torment Superboy. So, as you can no doubt see, Killer Moth is an odd character with a very convoluted and strange history, and that's why he didn't ever appear in the DC animated universe. I have seen claims that Paul Dini had an idea for the character and that he would have been voiced by Dan Aykroyd, but I haven't found an official source for that, so I can't report it as fact. All I know is that he was viewed as a comically absurd character, and he wasn't used in the shows of the DCAU. Although he did make a very brief appearance in the pages of Batman Adventures Volume 2, Issue 12, which chronicled Dick Grayson establishing himself as an independent hero in Bloodhaven. On his first night on patrol, he caught Killer Moth in the act, complimented him on his cocoon gun, and then took it for his personal trophy collection, much to Moth's despair. While Killer Moth was rejected for the DCAU, he found a home in the early 2000s Teen Titans cartoon. Their version was a very neat mashup of pretty much everything that had come before. He was a sort of mutant, but he still wore a moth-like set of armor and used mutated bugs to try to take over Jump City. He was also a doting father, and he forced Robin to take his bratty daughter Kitty to her high school prom after she had been jilted by her boyfriend. This fit in perfectly with the tone of Teen Titans, which could effortlessly switch between being dark, serious and dramatic to absurd, bizarre and genuinely funny. They didn't really treat Killer Moth as a joke, he was a credible threat, but there were still comical things about him, like how he'd switch from delivering a villainous monologue to coddling Kitty at a moment's notice. But when Teen Titans ended in early 2006, it freed up Killer Moth to be used in The Batman. Now, at the time, DC Comics imposed a mandate, colloquially called the Bat Embargo, that said that Batman characters couldn't be used in multiple properties at the same time. This is why most Batman villains weren't in Justice League Unlimited, and why it took so long for Robin to appear in The Batman. Teen Titans had claimed him first. But once the show ended around the time of The Batman's fourth season, they immediately took advantage by bringing in Robin, and Killer Moth tagged along for the ride. Their Killer Moth is a nameless doofus, a scrawny weed with delusions of grandeur, who was followed by moths wherever he went. He responded to an advert from the Penguin looking for villains to join his team after he was inspired by an Ocean's 11 type heist movie. He successfully recruited Firefly, Killer Croc and Ragdoll, but it's never really said how Killer Moth knew that the Penguin was hiring. Perhaps he intercepted someone else's invitation. Moth claimed to be a master of martial arts, and was armed with a cocoon gun, which always backfired on him. While he was obviously a fool, Penguin liked him well enough to allow him to be the driver and errand boy, making coffee and fetching donuts. I have to think that Penguin was flattered that someone actually wanted to spend time with him, but he probably also welcomed the idea of having a bigger loser than himself on the team. Killer Moth effortlessly made Penguin look better. Their first heist as a group was to steal a highly corrosive toxic chemical that they planned to use to burn through the impenetrable walls of billionaire Robert Howard's home to steal a jewel-encrusted penguin. Killer Moth was transporting the chemical, but the fumes got to him and when mixed with the moths that followed him around, caused him to mutate. When he was discovered by his teammates, he was encased in a foul-smelling chrysalis, and they assumed he was dead. However, he emerged as a gigantic Mothman whose saliva was powerfully acidic. Immediately, he put his new powers to good use to stand up for himself, demanding that his teammates treat him with respect, and to treat their boss with respect too. You'd think that given how Penguin had demeaned him and given him the grunt work, he'd also be mad at Penguin, but no. He admired the man and wanted him to succeed. This loyalty was completely undeserved, but Penguin was quick to exploit it and leave their teammates behind at the mercy of Batman, Robin and Batgirl. They were able to use Killer Moth's saliva to eat through Howard's defenses and make off with the Penguin statue. However, despite his tremendous new powers, he was still, at the end of the day, a loser. Robin and Batgirl worked together to get him to fly headfirst through the roof of a building, taking Penguin with him, and just like that, Team Penguin was no more and Killer Moth was taken to prison. Killer Moth didn't appear in any other episodes, but he did appear in 2 issues of The Batman Strikes, the official tie-in comic. In issue 32, he was invited to join Joker's new supervillain team and turned them down because they didn't have any snacks. And in issue 49, his attempt at robbing a bank was foiled by Robin, who was skipping school to fight crime. They weren't major appearances, but if you're a fan of this version of the character, I'd recommend tracking them down and reading them. Across the various incarnations of Batman, Killer Moth has had more identities than victories. From costumed crook to brain-damaged imposter, from flesh-eating Charaxes to Teen Titans Pest, to a mutated intern from Penguin's criminal crew. He's been laughed at, forgotten, rewritten and reborn, only to be laughed at again. But underneath all the bad luck and intentionally terrible costume design is something strangely enduring. A villain who never stopped trying to matter. Killer Moth might be a loser. No, actually, he is a loser, but he has his fans. And in the universe of gods, aliens and demonic pacts, there's something kind of relatable about a man who looked at Batman and unironically said, "Yeah, I can do that." Badly, yes, but hey, at least he tried. Okay, that's it for this week's essay. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really enjoyed the video and have the means, please consider making use of the thanks button to send a buck or two my way, because every little helps. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month. This will get you early access to my weekly video essay, priority responses to your comments, members-only videos, custom emojis, and an icon on your profile indicating that you're one of my people. And special thanks to my channel members. Everyone who was a member at the time of this video's creation is listed on the screen right now. If you want to see your name amongst all these wonderful people, join the channel now. Next time, I'll be back on Friday with a video about one of the weakest elements of Superman the Animated Series, Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen. And next Monday will be the 10th anniversary of Alan Burnett and Bruce Timm's attempt at redefining the Justice League with their horror-tinged film Justice League: Gods and Monsters. And yes, it's time for us to talk about it. Hope to see you then.